Hello, everyone. This is Megan,
And this is Alana.
and welcome to Tea Time Crimes. Content warning for today's episode. It includes suicide ideation and themes of suicide. Hello.
We're here.
I'm glad you made it. I know you had a late night last night.
Yeah, there were some airport delays, but eventually got in. But long week, a little tired.
And you got a lisp or an Irish
Little
accent.
tired.
Little tired. I like that better than a little tired. Cool. Well, I'm glad you're here. I know you're sleepy. Hopefully you'll have a nice caffeinated tea for today.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah, I feel like we're both a mess. It's been...
You've had a morning?
yeah, I feel like I always do. But I'm trying to leash train the big pup because I can't even take him outside without being just dragged around like a cartoon. And so I was taking him out back with his leash, and he saw a squirrel, and he jumped from the top step.
Puppies, man.
And brought me with it, and
Yep.
he's like 65 pounds, and so icing my shoulder.
Ouch.
Yeah. And then we've had some serious meltdowns today. Our 5-year-old decided he wanted to wear a certain pair of shorts that were in the laundry. And it was the worst thing that could ever happen to him. And I don't mean they were dirty, because I'm not above that. I would have said, put the dirty ones on. Let's go. Literally wet in the washing machine. Could not wear them.
Okay.
And the other 8 pairs of shorts that were available were just not cutting it. And I tried to explain to him that the shorts that he wanted were actually a set, and the alternate pair were in my hands. They just happened to be a different color. No dice.
Oh, boy.
No dice.
Ooh.
It was rough. He finally settled on some Spider-Man shorts after pretty intense interrogation. Yeah.
Like,
Mommy,
what?
have I worn these before? Yes, you've worn them before. Mommy, will my shorts be clean tomorrow? Yes.
Oh, my God.
Mommy, why didn't you wash them?
Oh.
Yeah.
Why?
I said, I didn't know you wanted to wear them, bud. Doing laundry today. Oh. Pitiful. But
sounds like a fun morning.
Yeah. That's how most mornings go here. When you have 2 puppies and a 5-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever. He finally got dressed, so that's all that happens.
It's out the door.
Mm-hmm. How did your week go? How were your travels?
It was good. It was very good. Beautiful weather. I mean, it's a long week, but it was nice to be there.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I imagine because you were up so late, you have a caffeinated tea for today. Am I right?
I do. I have an energizing tea. All right. Ready? I don't even know what it smells like. I haven't even smelled it.
Oh my goodness. Okay. You are tired.
All right. So this is, I'm not going to pronounce this very well.
That's what I'm hoping, obviously.
Waikana Amazon Ghoul. Hold on.
Ghoul? Like it's a Halloween tea?
Nope.
Too early.
Guayusa tea.
Guayusa.
And apparently guayusa is a leaf that you find in Ecuadorian jungles. It's akin to, like, it's a distant cousin of yerba mate. Have you seen that?
Do you have to nibble it and see if you die first, or can you just go straight in?
No, you go straight in. People have nibbled it for me. They already know.
Just like they've nibbled mushrooms. Do you see the logic that is happening, unfolding in front of you? This is a throwback to last week.
If I could forage these leaves, I would.
Go back and listen to last week if you want to hear her absurdity.
It's just being practical.
It's not.
Achieve your wildest dreams with the jaguar energy.
Ooh, you're going to be saucy if you drink this.
I know. And I took a picture of the tea bag in front of Nymeria because she's the closest thing I have to a jaguar.
Yeah, she's all black cat.
Just cute and little.
She's cute. She's very far from jaguar energy, though. She's more like mouse energy.
Yeah. She doesn't know where she is.
No, she doesn't.
She's a little darkness sprite. I think it has chai flavors, which we all know that I like, because the leaf itself is like instead of the normal tea plant leaves, right? And that's where caffeine comes from. But there's a little picture of cinnamon sticks and cloves that's hand drawn.
You say everything about teas as if it's common knowledge. You like, it comes from the leaves, obviously.
Obviously.
I'm afraid to ask, are you putting milk in it?
No.
Okay, there we go.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I would think you would. It's kind of a chai tea.
Yeah, but it didn't say to do that. Let me smell it.
What are the smells?
It smells like chai.
But you would put milk in chai. You did it in that caffeinated.
Yeah, but it's a black tea. This is a guayusa. Like, this is not a black tea.
I don't even know what that means.
It's the way that you do the leaves. Okay, I can already smell that there's not a lot of body.
Oh.
I can smell a lack of body. That's weird.
Not a lot of body odor.
Okay. It's like I'm drinking water. That's a nice cup of hot water.
Did you let it steep long enough?
Yes. I even set 5-minute timer. Thank you. Because if you don't say thank you, once the robot's they're uprising, they'll remember who was polite to them.
She ignores me. Every day, every time. All the time. It drives me crazy. She will not listen to me. She listens to my son, who I don't even know what he's saying.
You? Seriously?
Yes. I'll say, her name, shut off all lights, nothing. He'll do it, and he can't say his L's. Shut off lights, and everything. It's like, he's such a brat.
Of course. Yeah, it's technology.
Her and I get in a lot of fights.
That's hilarious. I would love to watch that.
So
you can smell the chai, and it just like kind of, it's like if you had a leak in your ceiling and it just kind of seeps through. There's no experience here.
Delicious. Get me a bag of that tea.
And supposedly it has a good caffeine, but I mean, I guess if I'm thirsty, I'll have some because it's water.
Why don't you add some honey and milk to it and see what happens?
I don't even want to put milk near this. I don't think it'll mix right. It's just gonna be how it is.
Do you want to go get another cup of something?
No, it's fine. I can just drink hot water.
The disappointment in her eyes is so
I
strong.
did have a cup of the Kolkata chai earlier because I knew, because that has good caffeine. So I had some of that.
So you're good
with my egg earlier.
Nice. So I'm on the edge of my seat for a rating here.
It's a thumbs down.
Just a regular one thumb down?
Dripping.
Dripping thumb.
A dripping thumb.
Still That's just one. I'm realizing we've never had 2 thumbs down.
It's disappointing.
I look forward to that day.
Honestly, I should have freaking given that cold brew 2 thumbs down. That was awful.
Oh, can't change it now. It's already been submitted.
I know.
Well,
the jury and the council already have it.
Yeah. Whew. All right. Oh man, I hate when you have a bad tea. You're just your energy is a little on edge when you've got a bad tea.
Well, I'm supposed to have Jaguar energy.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you seem like you might want to rip through the screen.
Yeah.
Hurt someone.
Yep. Still just leaking through the ceiling.
Still. What's it called? What's the tea called again? Oh, wait. It's a long name you can't pronounce.
Guayusa. Right. That's the leaf that this comes from.
That's the actual name of the tea?
Yeah. Amazon Guayusa tea. I mean, the brand is Waikana, but Guayusa is the leaf that they steep it in from.
Gotcha. So you can either buy this tea or just lay below a leak in your ceiling.
Yeah.
Essentially.
There you go.
Both would be the same.
Wait for the next storm. And then heat it up. Yep, actually. Heat up the leaky.
Yeah. Just catch it in a pot, put it on the stove, got your own tea.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, that is disappointing. I'm so sorry. Let's transition into the case for today. It is a tragic love story.
Oh.
It's very sad.
I almost chose a romantic tea.
Well, I wouldn't.
I was eyeing it.
I wouldn't call what happened romantic in any way.
Okay.
Very complicated.
Oh boy.
But it's a very complicated story. It's not like last week, if you haven't listened to the Belgana story throwback, where you just know it's just evil.
Yeah.
It's just yuck.
Not going to go well.
Yeah. This one, It's just a group of very flawed people having some tragedy happen to them. So on March 23rd of 1935, 67-year-old Francis Rattenbury was struck 3 times in the back of the head while he sat resting in his armchair. 5 days later, he died from his injuries.
Oh my God. It took a long time.
His much younger wife, Alma, and her much younger lover, George,
Oh,
were both arrested and both confessed.
we've seen this a few times.
This one's a little different, though. They both confessed. It's usually the other way around,
What do you mean?
where they both blame the other one.
Oh, yeah.
So this one's a little different. It's a little backwards. But there's so much more to this story than just Francis's last days. And the press did what it always does, which is they vilified the female.
Sure.
And they destroyed her. They painted Alma as the evil vixen, singing her siren song to this young boy who influenced him. And I quote, he could have been the son of any of us. And she's just this terrible middle-aged nymphomaniac who lured him into her web. That's what they're painting.
Boy.
So
jeez.
I'm going to present a couple things. I want to explain more of Alma than just this little snapshot of her life, this one terrible day. So you get a broader picture of who she is and what brought her to those moments. And then I'll explain what they believe happened. And nobody truly knows exactly what happened that day, but I want to see what you think. I love your criminal mind.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So get ready. Drink that hot sealing water. Alma was born in British Columbia, June of 1892 to 1898. You know how it is with that record keeping back in the day.
Yeah.
So you can see various ages for her at various stages of her life that are within some sort of range because I don't know. I don't know if she lied about her age or get confused.
I just thought of something.
Oh, good.
British Columbia.
Yeah.
Do you think it's called Columbia because of Columbus?
I have no idea. Well, you always...
Because that's Canada, right?
Yes, you always do this.
I just had an epiphany.
Why don't you Google that and get back to me by the end of the episode? You always ask these ridiculous questions about wars and geography. I don't know. I spent all week researching this woman's life, reading a 12-hour audiobook, 87 articles, and you're like, why did British Columbia get its name? I have no idea. It didn't come up. It wasn't in the trial transcript. For God's sakes.
I didn't never think of this. Anyways, please continue. Listeners, get back to us.
No, you find it yourself and get back to us. Speaking of the book I read, just throwing it out there, it was called The Fatal Passion of Alma Rattenbury by Sean O'Connor, and it was pretty good.
Oh, that's a nice title.
Alma Rattenbury doesn't really sound good in my voice, but a lot of this took place in the UK, so I imagine it sounded very pretty, like Alma Rattenbury.
That's not UK language. Oh, sorry.
What? It's like an English accent.
No, I did a bad accent.
Oh, well, obviously.
Yeah, it was not good.
Anyway, back to Alma, and Alana can take her maps and just sit in a room by herself. So Alma's family, her parents were like working middle class-ish. But her mother had come from a very poor background, and her mother had lots of siblings, and they were all musical. And so they actually, they sound
Jackson
like
5.
I was thinking more like Canada's the Carters, at the same time period. June Carter and her family.
Yeah.
No, you don't know.
Yes, I do.
Watch it.
Johnny Cash.
There you go. You got there. And they would travel around and perform pretty decent sized shows. And so some of her siblings played instruments, some of them sang, and her mother's talent, the mother's name is also Francis, so it's a little confusing because the husband is also, the man who died is also Francis. But Alma's mother, her specialty was elocution, which I guess is like the 1800s version of slam poetry.
Oh.
She basically recites things.
Okay.
That's her jam. I guess she's very good at it. I don't know.
Cool.
It sounds a little boring to me, but I would have to see an elocution performance to.
Yeah, maybe we have a YouTube video.
Yeah, do that after you find out the origin of British Columbia and get back to me. Anyway, so eventually Alma's mother opens up a music school with her siblings. So, one
Oh,
brother's
cool.
teaching piano, another sister's teaching vocal lessons, and then Frances is teaching elocution and deportment.
Elocution.
That's her jam. So Alma starts taking lessons from her aunts and uncles. She's very good at music. Very good.
Which
And
hurts.
her mother makes her practice. And I don't mean like you have to practice for 60 minutes before you go out and play. I mean, she will get punished if she doesn't practice for close to 10 hours a day.
That's a lot.
I know the math doesn't even make sense, but that's how much Alma said she had to practice when she was a kid.
Oh my God.
And she becomes a childhood prodigy. She plays
Wow.
both the violin and the piano. And the difference with Alma, obviously she's got just kind of the natural ability and then she has the
Yeah.
technical skills. But what's so unusual with Alma is that usually when kids are that age, she's 8 when she debuts. Usually when they're that age,
8.
if they're very good, they're very technically sound, but they lack kind of the passion behind the
Yeah, I know.
music
I
and the
get that.
piece and the
Yeah.
emotion because they're little kids. But
Right.
Alma didn't lack that. She
Interesting.
lost herself in the music at such a young age, and that's what set her apart from everybody else, and people were just astounded. She was incredible. So
Wow.
in 1899, the family inherits some money, and they use this to send Alma to the best schools that they can find
Okay.
so she can continue. In 1906, Alma actually receives a prestigious scholarship. Now, depending on the birth date, I'm going with the book. She was probably 14 at this
Okay.
time, and she moves to Toronto, and she decides she has to kind of pick, it's like when you're good at 2 sports, you have to pick the NBA or the NFL, you can't do both. So she picks the piano,
Oh
and
boy.
that's what she focuses on, and she continues to win scholarships, win awards. I mean, she's very, very good. When she first starts out, though, she gets very sick, and she's rushed to the hospital, and she has what appendicitis, which sounds ridiculous, but it's
Oh.
actually a fairly new disease at that time. Like the appendix surgery wasn't they hadn't done it
Oh.
a million times. It was kind of a new thing.
Sure. Yeah.
So she has to have an emergency surgery to save her life, and there are some complications, and she spends the entire summer in the hospital.
Oh my God.
And so as soon as she gets out, she doesn't want to lose her scholarship. She just gets right back to practicing.
Jeez.
So she's got a very intense work ethic. So she continues, like I said, she's winning awards. She's got this scholarship. She's studying under one of the best musicians in Canada.
Okay.
She's playing for sold out concert halls, big, well known. She's known as Canada's musical prodigy.
Okay.
She girl's
Cool.
good. Yeah, she's very talented and she's very accomplished, and she has, a presence that typically is lost on a teenager,
Yeah.
right? Like at that young age. That's all going on for Alma. Very exciting. When she's in her very early 20s, she meets Caledon Robert John Radcliffe Dowling.
I don't think that name's long enough.
Yeah.
Can you add another word there?
That's ridiculous. He was born in 1886, and he started out as a farmer in Saskatchewan, but that didn't pan out. Sounds terrible.
Okay.
And then he relocated, and he actually got into real estate.
All right.
He and Alma connect. No one knows exactly how they met, but they fall in love. She is head over heels in love. I mean, they truly, it's like love at first sight for them. It's a love story.
Okay.
When Alma's 22 in 1913, the couple get married. But in July of 1914, World War I.
Okay, I was about to say, was Canada? I would imagine Canada's part of World War. Like they definitely contributed.
I was expecting you to deliver. Yeah, Canada is part of the British Empire, so if they're at war, Canada's with them. So John, what's name? What is his real name here? There's so many.
Radcliffe.
Yeah, John. No, we're both wrong. John Radcliffe's way in the middle. It's either Dowling or Caledon. Anyway, her husband Caledon. Her husband goes to war. While he's at war, I mean, also Alma's concert life is put on hold. They're not doing. She's not performing.
They're
right
not
now.
Spending resources on concerts right now.
Yeah, it's things are different. So she's actually working at the war office during that time.
Yeah.
And she's waiting to, I mean, I know it's terrible now for families when somebody is, overseas or deployed or whatever. But all they had at that point were telegrams. And the
Yeah.
telegrams were charged per word. So they were very brief and very short.
Got it.
So all Alma is getting is things like wounded on the 5th of February, but remains at duty.
Oh my God.
So that's all she gets. He was actually wounded. He was in the hospital. He was released.
Okay.
And then again, later on, like time is passing, right? We're in like April of 1916. Conditions satisfactory. We'll send any further news. August 25th, 1916. Deeply regret to inform you that C.R.J.R.
No.
Dowling was killed in action August 21st. The Army Council offers their sympathy.
I know it.
And that's it. And he was 30 at the time. Alma's now only 24 and she's widowed. She is destroyed.
Oh.
This is devastating to her. She's also
Yeah.
trying to collect her pension because she doesn't have a way to support herself because, again, she can't she's a musician and that's not really available to her at this point.
Right. At the wartime doesn't care about art.
She is getting a lot less than she expected from the pension office because they didn't recognize her husband's recent promotion to captain. So she has to spend her energy and her time fighting that to make sure she has enough to live on.
Sucks. Yeah.
Just to go through a process. She wins. Once that's settled and she's like, okay, I have what I'm expecting to live off. She doesn't even get to bring Dalling's body home. That's not how they do it. They bury the men with their soldiers. And she doesn't even know where he's buried. It's 3 months before she gets a notification letting her know where he is.
Jeez.
And so she packs up and decides to go and visit and find his grave.
In Germany?
And pay her respects. I think he's in France.
Okay.
I don't actually know. Nobody knows if she actually ever found the grave. There's no way to check. It's not like they have a guest book.
Yeah.
But that's why she went over there. And while she was there, she actually stayed there and volunteered for the Scottish Women's Hospital for Foreign Services, which provided nurses, doctors, cooks, ambulance, and they were all mostly, if not all, women.
Yeah.
And she needed to speak French.
Bonjour.
In order to work there. Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's all she said. And she was an orderly, technically was her, what they called her, but she had to, she's cleaning floors, she's cleaning, doing laundry, she's cooking, she's carrying stretchers.
What's the toilet situation?
I'm sure that it is her first concern. I again, don't know. Put it on your list and get back to me.
Huh.
And then she also is, having to like sweep the surgery floors of blood. She's having to hold men down for amputations.
Oh.
It's rumored that she even performed an emergency procedure once because no doctors were available.
And she's like, I've seen this done once. Yeah. Better try it.
Like, well, this is your only shot.
Yeah. God, World War I was brutal.
Brutal.
Like, it was like
think of the medicine they have.
Terrible war.
Terrible. Ugh. She's working, her shifts are in her letters home to her family. Her shifts are like 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. Then you're supposed to sleep for a couple hours, but there are literally bombs and planes flying overhead. And then she would have to go back to work at 8 o'clock and work through the night.
Oh my God, that's too much.
She's doing this. I imagine it's better than feeling sorry for herself and feeling her grief. She's like throwing herself.
Yeah, it's like filling that gap.
Yeah, throwing herself into work. And she's probably feeling connected to Dowling.
Right, because she's taking care of soldiers.
Yeah, she's taking care of men and she's hopefully saving men and sparing other women from what she's going through right now.
Exactly. She seems great.
So in 1917, the hospital realizes that they're just too far from the front lines and that's causing a lot of men to die. So they find an abandoned structure and they set up a unit there.
Closer to the battlefield.
Yeah, exactly. Alma actually gets wounded during a raid while she's dressing a wound.
Whoa.
She's okay. She makes a full recovery, and she even receives an award. Is that what they're called? An award? A medal. That's what I mean. A medal. It just sounds like a crazy, crazy time for her.
Yeah.
Now,
I can't imagine.
After the war ends, right? The war ends in 1918.
Yep.
Alma's a different person. The life she was imagining, which was she was going to be married to the love of her life and they were going to have, I don't know, if they were going to have a family or whatever. They were going to be together in any whatever family meant to them. And she was going to be a concert pianist
Yeah, exactly.
who was well known, who was
Ugh.
beloved across Canada, and he was going to be a real estate agent, and they were going to have this happy, calm, content life. That's what she was expecting. Clearly, that is gone.
No, she's a widow with PTSD.
Exactly. She's a widow, a wounded widow with PTSD.
Right.
So she's now jaded, cynical. Her whole outlook on life just changes.
That's
And,
terrible.
people kind of go one way or the other in situations like this. They
Yeah,
become
yeah.
extra cautious and afraid of death, or they go the other way. And Alma went the other way, which is,
Oh boy.
life is short. You got to just do what feels good.
Oh, and the 20s are coming, baby.
End of story. So she starts up an affair with a man named Compton Pakenham.
Wow.
And he also served in the war. And he's actually married and has a young kid, which they
Whoops.
assume Alma knows. But he did not return home. And Compton's wife,
It's
Phyllis,
messed up.
writes him a letter that basically says, hey, your daughter and I haven't had money for months, and I need you to return home because that's our arrangement. Thanks. And he writes her.
Thanks.
He writes her back. Yeah, we're just not a good match. I think you know that. Bye.
Okay, but we still have a child that we need to take care of.
Yeah, I don't think that child has no memory of him. I don't even know if they met ever.
Jeez.
So Phyllis, Compton's wife, files for divorce. Now, the divorce rules are changing because of the war. So we've covered this before, like in the Manning story. In the mid 1800s, men could divorce women if they could prove adultery. But women could only divorce men if they proved adultery and something else, like something terrible, like incest or cruelty. They created a bill that allowed one of the reasons to be desertion.
There you go.
Because the war was changing things. Men were coming home from the war and they'd been gone for years, and women had affairs.
Yeah.
Or men weren't coming home from the war. Also, women and men were getting married very hastily. So they didn't really know the person that was coming home. Plus, you're coming home with
of course.
PTSD. So you're
right.
even
You
if you did
changed
know the
person.
person, you're different.
Yeah. Man, what a crazy time.
They were saying they needed to change with the times, right? They needed to change and make adjustments based off of the time. So Phyllis was able to file based off of, I guess, both reasons, honestly. But I think she went with desertion, right? He wasn't coming back.
Okay.
So pretty soon after, Alma and Compton get married.
Wow. Okay. So they're serious.
Yeah. And I think this is what I think is going through Alma's head. I don't know that she really cares much for Compton in the way that she did for her previous husband, but still there's the stigma that women need to be married.
Yeah.
Especially if you're with another man. You need to be married. And because so many men died in World War I, the press is just hammering the fact that there aren't enough men for the women. They literally talk about there are a surplus of women. So if you have a man, you better just marry him. That's all you're going to get, right? Because God forbid you be alone. So that's the kind of vibe that's happening. So I imagine that had to play, even though Alma's a little untraditional and a little bit more free-spirited, I imagine that had to play into her thought process.
Sure.
So the two of them get married. She starts giving piano lessons to support them. He starts lecturing as a doctor who went to Oxford, except he never went to Oxford and he's not a doctor. So I'm not sure what he's talking about.
Okay.
I guess be all you can be. It's super easy. Reach for the stars. The couple have a son named Christopher pretty quickly after they get married.
Yeah.
But as you can imagine, Compton turns out to be the great husband that he was to Phyllis.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And Alma actually just leaves him. She contacts her
Bye.
parents. She packs up Christopher and they just go back home.
To Canada?
She goes back home to her family. Yeah.
Got it.
With her parents' help, because they have somebody to watch Christopher, she actually starts performing again.
Yay.
And
Hopefully
she's
she
nervous.
discovers herself again.
Nobody remembers her. A lot has happened since she was
Yeah.
17 and at the top
Say
of
so.
the piano world. Nobody remembers her. Nobody knows who she is. But the second she starts playing, everybody sits back and, oh,
Good.
okay. Like, this is legit.
Love it.
After one of her performances, she meets Francis Rattenbury.
Okay.
Now, he is an accomplished architect. He has designed several buildings in Victoria specifically that are just successful, famous builds.
Okay.
And so she meets him. He's 55 at the time. He's much older than her, right? She's in her 20s still.
Yeah, it's a bit of a gap.
He's also married.
Oh, man.
I
Know
know.
how to pick them, huh?
There's not a lot of men around. It's a surplus.
Yeah, I guess so. Everybody's...
Anyway, so Francis, just give you a little background on Francis. He had come to Canada when he was 25 because there was a building boom and he was starting out as an architect, and he got the Victoria's Parliament buildings. He won that bid, and it's just a famous, successful, they're beautiful buildings.
Cool.
And then he just...
So he's not from Canada? He moved there?
No, he's from England.
Okay.
He just kept bid after bid for like the next 20 years. He did the Empress
So
Hotel.
He's doing well.
He's accomplished as well. The Victoria Courthouse, the Victoria Heights High School. He worked for the railroad and would design buildings like along the way.
Yeah.
But he's married to a woman named Phyllis. They got married in 1898.
Did you just say Phyllis?
Nope. I did say Phyllis. He got married to
Oh
a
my
woman
God, I
named
was like,
Florence.
what?
No, sorry. Too much coincidence. He got married to a woman named Florence
Okay.
in 1898. Thank you for catching that. 7 months later, do the math, they had a child. So you have to assume that's why they got married.
Okay.
Yeah. It's typically 9 months, just saying.
It's typically.
That's what people assume was why they got married, because they seemed like an odd match. Now, Florence seemed like a pretty nice woman, actually. She seemed pretty refined and respectable. And, she kind of reminds me of, the Cordelia case.
Yeah.
She kind of reminds me of John's wife. She just, people like her. Like she's got some society clout. She's very reserved and shy. She's nothing flashy. Right?
Okay,
she's just
definitely.
a steady lady.
Mm-hmm.
But Francis, they have 2 children together. Francis seems challenging. He's very talented. He's very accomplished.
Yeah.
But
those people can be special.
Yeah.
To deal with.
There's lots of rumors about working with him, how it's very difficult. So he'll underbid on projects and then go way over budget. He'll change things last minute.
Yeah.
He will fight with anybody who challenges his vision, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Right. And
hate it.
By the time Alma gets into the picture here, Francis and Florence are not doing well. They're going through periods where they don't even speak, and they just pass notes between their second child, their daughter Mary.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
So they write a note, hand it to the daughter, and the daughter hands it.
I mean, I think they're in a big house. Like, I don't think they're in houses like what we're living in.
That's ridiculous. I don't care.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Get a whiteboard. Well, texting's not available. I guess it's like a tweet. I don't know. So weird.
Yeah, it's rough. It's a little rough. He starts this affair with Alma, and he's just so taken with her. She is beautiful. She's fashionable. She's accomplished like him, but she also lets loose. She smokes and drinks. I mean, she's seen some stuff. I kind of am picturing at this point Claire from Outlander, obviously. Like,
yes.
Right. She the rules don't apply to her because she's seen a lot of crap and she doesn't have time for it.
Exactly. Like the stupid rigid rules of society. She's like, I've seen men like blown to bits, and I've almost been blown to bits.
I'm gonna have a cigarette.
Past. Yep.
That's how she feels, which is very different than Florence's existence and not what she's thinking, right? And so Francis is very attracted to this. So he starts having an affair with her, and he's not very quiet about it. And I think he thinks people won't care, but people do. The society in British Columbia shuns him. They're very upset with this. And he asks Florence for a divorce, and she says no. And so he starts playing hardball. He starts taking Alma out now for real, like to very public places and flouting her around on his arm. It's getting nasty. She still says no. So he sends somebody to go to the house and take all the furniture out of it. She has to hide the furniture in her bedroom.
How old are the kids?
I don't know how she moved couches so fast. Well, they got married in 1898. So this is happening with Alma in the early 20s, and that would their first child was born the same year. Yeah, and then he does things like shut off the heat, shut off the lights. Florence still refuses. So then he just starts bringing Alma to the house.
Okay.
While Florence is upstairs. Yeah.
That's not cool.
I know. And the fact that Alma agreed to it isn't great either.
No, Florence, step up for yourself here.
Well, there's rumors that Alma was possibly doing drugs or drinking pretty heavily as well during this time,
Mhm.
which may account for some of this reckless behavior.
It's the 20s.
I don't know. Anyway, so finally, Florence can't take it. She's like, okay, this is absolutely terrible, and you're the worst.
Is she stabbed them maybe?
No, she just got a really good settlement and jetted. But here's what she did. I think they expected her to kind of run away, in the night, but she didn't. She just bought a nice house very close to the original home. It was like, I still live here. This is my neighborhood.
Right.
You guys can
It's her
you guys can
community.
get bent. I don't care. And everybody supported her.
Yeah.
Alma and Francis actually get married officially because now he's no longer married.
Because he was such a good husband.
And just they are outcasts.
Yeah.
Total outcasts. Sadly, unrelated, Florence dies and passes away.
Oh.
Alma actually goes to the house to give her condolences and to the oldest daughter, and the daughter just shuts the door in her face. Like, they want nothing to do with Alma.
Duh.
I know.
What was she thinking? Like, I get like the sentiment, but you need to understand, like, that's a selfish thing to do.
I know. So that's Alma doesn't either. She's just not getting it. There's also the daughter thought that she seemed like she was on something.
Okay.
So that's also a possibility. So they kind of thought, Francis and Alma kind of thought, well, now that Florence is gone, maybe we'll be accepted back into the community. No dice.
Wow.
So they leave.
Bye.
They, at this time, by the way, I forgot to mention, right before Florence's death, they actually had their own son together.
Okay.
Named John. So they take John and Christopher, because Alma has the son from before who didn't legally change his name, but they tell everyone his name is Christopher Rattenbury. Okay. So they take Christopher and John and Alma and Francis, and they take a trip to eventually end up in England. They go an indirect route, kind of like they're traveling.
Wow.
But Francis is doing things like gambling so badly that they have to flee in the night because he can't pay his debts.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a little dicey. They decide to settle in Bournemouth. I'm sure I'm saying that right. Wrong. Bournemouth. It's a garden city by the sea. And it's not a huge town, but it's got shops and it's got some culture. They have an orchestra that plays.
I'll move there.
Yeah, it sounds nice. And Christopher's gone most of the time because he's older, so he boards at school and only comes home on the weekends.
Got it.
But by this point, Alma and Francis have a different kind of relationship than when they initially started. Ever since John's been born, they have not been intimate as man and woman, right? They're companions. That's how they say it in the book. It's so funny. They're like, they have not had the marriage of a normal man and wife. Right? Anyway, they're very dramatic. God. They sleep in separate bedrooms. Alma sleeps there's 2 beds in the room, but she shares a room with John, the youngest. Okay. The baby. And then Francis has his own room. And the master bedroom just is a guest room. I don't know why somebody didn't take the master bedroom.
Yeah, right.
Come on, guys. This is dumb. And their home is called Villa Madeira. That's what their house is. Villa Madeira. They also have live-in help. So that's the situation with the rooms.
Okay, that's nice.
John, the little boy, spent the most time with Alma, and he said she was a fantastic mother. They would spend the mornings at the sea. Then they would come home and garden. They would go on picnics, and Alma would play the violin, bring her violin, and play music.
I want to do this.
And she called him her chipmunk.
Stop it right now. That's a great nickname.
Cute nickname. Eventually, once John reaches the age where he would start to go to school, they no longer need the live-in nanny.
Okay.
Alma has what they call a companion servant, which it essentially becomes Alma's only friend.
Like
but I assume she just does everything. A prostitute? God, no. You took a really weird turn, you nut.
You said a companion.
Well, I think they mean like she runs her errands for her. She helps her get she gets her breakfast. She gets her tea. Like she's
like a maid.
Yes, she's a domestic servant, you weirdo. And her name is Irene.
You're the one who said companion, okay?
That's what it says in the book. Her name is Irene Riggs. Sometimes Alma calls her Irene. And
I was about to call her Irene.
you were not. Such a
I
liar.
was.
Yeah, well, we'll
I was
never
going
know
to say
now.
good old Irene.
Yeah, well, Alma loves Irene, and Irene loves Alma.
Yeah,
So at
their
first,
companion, wink, wink.
no. At first, Irene is a little taken aback by Alma because she's different than anybody she's ever worked for. And
Oh, I'm sure.
some of the differences are so funny just because they're a time thing. Like Alma comes downstairs in her pajamas. Gasp,
Instead of being all made up.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
she kind of keeps odd hours. Sometimes, some days she'll sleep in and not get out of bed. Some days, she just isn't as
funny.
conventional as some of the other women
Yeah.
that Irene has worked for. But Irene grows to really, really like her because Alma is always very generous and very kind to her.
Okay.
And they become close friends.
Hmm.
But Irene does admit that Alma has mood swings. She would be very excited and happy, and then she would not come out of her room. And so
Yeah.
I'm unsure if she was undiagnosed with something like bipolar, or
I'm
if
sure
she
she
was,
didn't work through some issues that she went through.
yeah, or if she was taking drugs. There are also rumors that she was possibly medicating with morphine, maybe cocaine.
Well.
I mean, we know morphine's like the cream of the crop in that time.
Yep.
Yeah, and Alma's health is also starting to deteriorate. She's very sick often, and they find out she's very close with their family doctor. This is a day when doctors made house calls. Could you imagine?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it makes so much sense. You're sick. Why do you have to leave the house?
I know.
Anyway, they found out that she had tuberculosis.
Oh.
And so she had to have a couple operations. She had to have her lymph nodes drained regularly, and it was very painful.
That sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
Anything you have to drain.
I know. Draining sounds awful. By 1932, again, not sure of the age, the book believes that was the year that Alma would have turned 40.
Okay, and we're going right into the depression.
She's not feeling good, right? Her little chipmunk is going off to school.
Yeah.
Francis he's an old man. He's got no interest in her.
Right, he's 30 years older than her.
He's got no interest in doing things. She's very lonely. She's depressed.
She needs Irene.
She has Irene. Now, she doesn't play music anymore, and Francis is
She needs to. That's what's going to bring her joy.
Francis is very tight with the money. So she doesn't really have, I think she wants some retail therapy or something of her own, and she doesn't have it. Francis actually, to his credit, picks up on some of this, and he buys her a brand new piano to encourage her to play. So she refuses to play any of the, classical concertos that she did before, but she starts listening to contemporary music, and she starts composing her own songs.
Cool.
Francis, this is a classic example of Francis, like how I imagine him in my head. So Francis is very excited by this and wants to help Alma. So he works really hard to get her music in front of producers.
Mm-hmm.
And they get rejections. People won't even listen to it. And then finally he gets somebody to listen to it. And as soon as they hear it, they're like, this is amazing. Yeah. And they get a lyricist and a singer, and she actually ends up producing 12 records. Francis is so excited. He's actually worked really hard to help his wife in trying to help her come out of her mood.
Yeah.
However, at the same time, as soon as Alma gets a little bit of success, he says, okay, great. I'm going to write the lyrics for your next song. And Alma doesn't love the idea. One, because Francis is not known as a writer. And two, this is hers, and he doesn't get that.
Yeah.
He's trying to inject himself. This is like he's trying to do something nice, but he doesn't understand the full picture. So he actually writes lyrics to one of her songs, and at the next dinner they go to at the producer's house, he recites them, and there's this awkward silence, and then everybody bursts out laughing.
Oh, no.
But to Francis's credit, he says something along the lines of, well, I guess I better stick to buildings, and just laughs it off.
Good.
So there's a weird dynamic. He's like very stubborn and forceful, and we know he can be mean, but at the same time, he's trying in certain ways. Now, Alma is drinking pretty heavily during this time to self-medicate, and so is Francis. Francis spends most of his evenings just drunk in a chair.
God.
And Francis says to Alma, like, hey, you're still young. Go live your own life. Meaning, go find a boyfriend, because I don't have it anymore.
Wow.
She's like, yeah, what, kind of, I don't think she really thinks too much of it, but just whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So after the nanny has left, they have the funds to hire a different kind of servant. So they have Irene, and they put an ad in the paper for a handyman chauffeur because John will have to go back and forth to school, and they just need stuff done around the house. So they put this ad in the paper. Daily willing lad, 14 to 18 for housework, scout trained preferred. I don't know what half of those things mean. But anyway, 1934, George Stoner, a former mechanic, very athletic young man, interviews for the job. He tells Alma, I'm a little older than what you asked for. I'm 22, but
Good.
I'm good at, everything you're asking. She explains the job to him. He's a live-in. He has a bedroom there at the villa. And Alma and Francis really like him. He's dependable. He's responsible. He didn't do well in school because he's got that mechanical mind.
Mm-hmm.
He can put things together, build things. Like this is his jam.
Yeah.
Well, after some time passes, Alma and Irene take a trip together and they bring George. It's thought that trip away is where Alma and George are first together.
Oh boy.
They believe that
As a man and a woman?
As a man and a woman, yeah. It's believed that Alma took the lead, but nobody knows for sure.
Oh my God.
Also, FYI, George lied about his age. He's only 18.
Oh.
But
no.
The consent in
She's 40.
Yeah, the consent was 16. And prior to that, it'd been 12 and 13. So,
oh my God.
He's practically an old man. Now, Francis didn't seem to know anything, but Alma did pull him aside and said, hey, just want to let you know I took you up on your advice. I'm living my life. Wink, wink. And he was like, cool. But they don't know if he knew with whom. However, it's not a huge house. So,
got it.
There's some theories that he did. Anyway, Alma and George are just like two lovebirds. They love each other. They love each other.
Oh boy.
Yeah, nobody knows how old Alma is. The book thinks she's 40, but other people think that she's only like an 18 to 20 years older than him. I mean, she's still considerably older, but nobody knows exactly.
Yikes.
George has a little bit of a temper.
Uh-oh.
He's got a little bit of a violent streak, and Irene witnesses some fights between the two of them after some time. At one point, Alma says, listen, we should stop. I'm way older than you. I'm married. Like, what's the play here? What's the end game, right? This is not going to work out. We should just break up now before it gets ugly.
Just do it for fun,
and
not for fights.
He gets very upset.
Uh-oh.
Very upset. And Irene says she came into the room and George was choking Alma.
All right, he's got to go.
They separated. I mean, like, they're still together, but they're physically separated in that moment. Like, he stops touching her. And Alma seems pretty unfazed by the whole thing. George uses that moment to say, I'm on drugs. That's, I think, to excuse his behavior.
That's not an excuse.
However, Alma had stopped drinking and doing any drugs because of George, because George was straight. He didn't.
Oh.
Is that the right word? I mean, he didn't
straight
do any
edge.
drugs. Straight edge, that's what I mean. Well, he was also straight.
He also seems straight.
He also seems straight.
But you never know in those
yeah, he could have been. And so she had kind of cut back on all of that stuff because of him. So it's a little confusing. It seems like maybe it was just an excuse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, Alma's getting sick of this lack of money because the royalties kind of dried up from her music. She wasn't super, super successful with it anyway.
Okay.
And so she tells Francis that she needs another one of her procedures. And he just hands over, here you go, here's the money for it. But she doesn't. And now she needs to pretend that she has a procedure, so her and George go away.
Oh.
And while they're gone, they're in a place where nobody knows them, and Alma buys George some really nice suits, and people are calling him sir. Remember, he's a servant, so this is so new to him, and he's loving it. They can go out to the theater, they can go out to dinner, they can be together. He's got a taste of like what existence should be, and he almost can't go back. He actually secretly buys Alma an engagement ring on this trip.
Oh God.
The pair return, back. George is just like he's planning his future with Alma. He doesn't care. Now, shortly after that trip, George says he saw Alma and Francis actually being a man and a woman. Alma said that was not true because that never happened, but the door was closed and it's not typically closed. So George says he witnesses this intimate moment, but then he also says that he overhears Francis. Francis is talking about a business deal that he really wants to land with Alma's help. And so they're going to like away to this dinner, and he says, hey, George says, he said, hey, this guy really likes you, the guy who's making the decision. So could you sleep with him so that we can seal this deal? And that infuriates George.
Wait, Francis says that to
Alma. He's asking his wife, he's like prostituting out his wife to land a business deal, according to George.
Okay, cool. So both men suck.
So George is livid. He's livid. So after Francis leaves, George confronts Alma about it. And that's why I think Alma must have been on stuff, because nothing phases her. She's just like, she's just trauma. She's like, eh. And George actually pulls a gun, which turned out to be a toy gun. I don't know that Alma knew that. Alma still didn't care. She's like, get it.
He's not, you shouldn't be with someone like that.
Well, she's concerned after the first incident when he said he was on drugs. This is interesting about Alma. She actually called her doctor, the one who sees her all the time for her issues. And she knew she'd have to explain the situation to him. And she knew it was a risk, but she wanted the doctor to assess George to see if he was safe to be around her children.
Oh.
And so she told the doctor everything. He assessed George, and he found out that George didn't even know what cocaine was. So he's like, he's not on drugs. I don't know why.
He's just an angry piece of shit.
But I don't know how not being on drugs is any better than being abusive.
No, it's still, you're still being abusive. It doesn't matter. You're making choices. That's it.
Anyway.
F him.
Alma's like, get over it. I'm going on a business trip. And Alma says later that she wasn't asked to sleep with that man. She was just supposed to flirt.
Yeah, okay.
Which I guess she's good at it. Anyway, so Stoner leaves. He's very upset. Now,
see ya, don't come back.
He goes to his family's house, which is very close by. Now, from here on out, the account is what they believe has happened, but nobody knows for sure. Okay? This is what they think happened the night Francis was attacked. So what they've pieced together, but there's a bunch of different information I'll go over later. But like I said before, George and Alma do something unusual, which is that they both confess to save the other one. They talk a lot about Ruth Snyder in this episode, because it's around, or in this book, because it's around the same time period. And did that.
That's too funny.
I know. We covered that earlier, the Granite Woman and the Putty Man, because the second they got in a room, they both blamed the other one.
Yeah.
The second that happened. So anyway, on March 24th, 1935, George was furious, right? They'd had that fight. He leaves. He goes to his family's house and he asks for a mallet. He says he needs to drive in some wooden pegs. They say it's in the shed, on the second shelf.
Into a skull.
George goes back to Villa Madeira, and through the window, he sees Alma kiss Francis. Inside, Francis is sitting in his chair drinking. Alma's going upstairs to pack for their trip, and she gives Francis a kiss goodnight and says goodnight.
Oh, to her husband?
Her husband.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
As soon as Alma goes upstairs, supposedly, George enters the home, hits Francis over the head with the wooden mallet 3 times, drops the wooden mallet, and goes upstairs to change. Francis isn't dead. He doesn't die for 5 days. But he is left bleeding alone. Irene comes home at 10:30, but she goes right upstairs. She doesn't go into the sitting room. She goes right upstairs. When she goes upstairs, she sees George like looking over the railing, looking downstairs, and she says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm checking to see if all the lights are out." And she says, "Okay." She goes into her bedroom. Alma comes in and talks to her for a few minutes, like normal, and then she goes back to her room.
If anything happens to Irene, I'll be upset.
George comes in and, sees Alma. I don't know. I guess they're a man and a woman at that point. I don't know.
Alma, get rid of this guy.
But George seems weird to her. So apparently she questions him, what's going on. And meanwhile, Irene thinks that she hears a noise. So she actually goes to Francis's bedroom and listens through the door to make sure he's okay. She doesn't hear anything, so she thinks, he must be asleep. She still doesn't know
he's not in there.
That he's not in there. So she goes back to bed. Now, Alma is still grilling George, saying, hey, what's up with you? He says that he was mad and jealous and that he's hurt Frances. And Alma freaks out. What do you mean you've hurt Frances? And then she listens and she can hear something like heavy breathing. So she runs downstairs.
His skull's probably bashed in.
She finds severe head wounds, and I assume that she is assessing it from her background as a nurse.
Yeah.
She's like assessing the wounds. He's not responding to her as like a few, I'm sure it's happening in seconds, but as more time passes and he's not waking up, he's not answering her, she starts to panic, apparently. She runs back upstairs. She tells George to stay in that room and to not come down until she tells him to. She yells for Irene to call the doctor. She goes back down. She starts cleaning the wounds and trying to dress them. And then she asks George to come down. George, Irene, and Alma move Frances into his room so that he can be on his bed.
Okay.
She tells Irene to clean up the blood because she doesn't want John to see it. Right? John's asleep upstairs as a 6-year-old. Now, it's believed that the wooden mallet was left by the chair. George picks it up and takes it outside.
Okay.
The doctor arrives and immediately calls an ambulance. This is serious.
Yeah.
Frances is taken. He's in critical condition. The police arrive and Alma is not right.
Uh-oh.
Alma says first that she's done it and she's hidden the mallet. The problem is she has no idea where the mallet is. So she can't lead them to it. And she says she'll tell them another time.
Why is she
Then
protecting
she says,
this stupid guy?
My lover did it, but she won't say who her lover is.
Who?
She's trying to make up this
Yep.
mysterious lover that came in. And then she tries to kiss the police.
Okay, just going for it.
I mean, we're just all in now. Chips on the table.
My God.
So poor John is awake upstairs, but nobody will tell him what's happening because there's so much commotion. All the lights are on. He has no idea what's going on. The family doctor, gives Alma some morphine and sends her to bed. We'll carry this on in the morning, right? The next morning, Alma comes down. She says the same stuff. I did it. And so John sees his mother being taken away that morning.
Oh, boy.
Alma's charged with attempted murder to start.
Okay.
And she's writing letters to George from prison. She does not do well. Her health steadily declines. She's writing letters to George telling him how much she loves him, asking how Frances is, asking how the boys are, asking if somebody can get her bail. She's not doing well. Even the warden of the prison sits her down and says, listen, you have to tell the truth. I don't think you did this. You need to tell the truth.
No, your piece of shit boyfriend did.
Meanwhile, George takes Irene around and says, here's where the mallet is hidden. And here's where I got it.
Why are you putting it on Irene?
And Alma, as she was leaving, whispered to Irene, have George tell me where the mallet is hidden.
Oh, okay.
And George refused to tell. Frances died the morning of March 28th, 1935. And now Alma is charged with murder, which, she could be sentenced to life or death. Irene uses that opportunity to tell the police what George has told her. And they search the home. They find the engagement ring receipt. And they go to Stoner's house, and his family confirms that, yeah, that's their mallet. And George says, yep, I did it. He also confesses. So now they're both taken into custody. Frances's autopsy shows that he had a 9-inch fracture in his skull, which is
Jesus, that's
a lot of force.
Huge.
Yeah. So Alma and George
Poor
actually
guy.
tried together, which I think is always weird. And like I said, people, it's this poor young man, with
That's
this
bullshit.
Seductress of a woman who's
She
betrayed
had
her
nothing
husband.
to do with it.
So in May of 1935, they're actually on trial at the Old Bailey. And Alma refuses to change her story. And her lawyers are trying everything. First, they try to scare her. Listen, you're going to be execued if you're found guilty. Doesn't matter. Next, they try to explain to her, hey, George was charged as well. So you're not even making sense. They're trying to rationalize with her. George is also being tried. So it doesn't help for both of you to be executed. Yeah. You need to tell the truth. Then they bring in her son, Christopher. And they think this is the only thing that will appeal to her. And they let Christopher visit her in the prison. And he tries to reason with her. And from that, she decides to tell her version of events.
Okay, good. Good job, Christopher.
Irene shows up. The lawyers say that she was the best witness that they'd ever seen in their lives. Irene delivered, and she was loyal to
course
the
she
end.
did.
Of course she did.
Yes.
Irene's the real hero in this, the
I
only
love
hero in this story.
her.
And Irene tried very, very hard to show another side of Alma, like the side we've just spent the last, hour explaining.
Yeah.
She was not this, middle-aged sex, crazed woman trying to keep a young boy with gifts.
Literally not even close. Like I wouldn't have, like, knowing the true events, that's not even a thing.
So she describes Alma in a totally different light. She does her best. She also tells her everything she knows, everything that George told her, everything that she'd seen. Also, Alma had written letters to Irene. And in those letters, she didn't flat out say it, but there were things like, I don't know why George is doing this. I don't want anything to, it was kind of showing another side of
Yeah.
Alma wanting to protect George. So she shared that with the police.
Good.
George doesn't take the stand. His lawyers don't recommend it, but Alma does. And everyone thinks she's this heartless woman. She's
Makes me
very
mad.
composed. She's very beautiful. I mean, the papers comment on it. She is soft-spoken and perfectly calm. And she tells the truth as much as she's willing, but she tries to not incriminate George any more than she has to. It's like this weird balance that she's agreed to with her lawyers.
Yeah.
So she explains that Francis and her were companions, nothing else. That she loved George. That her first instinct was to protect George, and admits the conversation they had upstairs. But at one point, the defense starts asking her questions about the situation, like, how would you and George be together? And he would come to my room. The room you share with your son? Well, my son's a heavy sleeper. They ripped her apart for being a terrible, disgusting mother.
Got it.
And so that was tough. That was damaging.
Yeah.
George stays silent through the whole trial, just no expression, and he's drawing in public sympathy left and right.
I hate that. I hate that so much.
The jury took 48 minutes to deliberate, and they come back with a verdict. Alma Rattenbury, not guilty.
Yeah.
George Stoner, guilty, but they recommend mercy.
Oh, okay.
They believe that he had a moment of temporary insanity.
No.
George is sentenced to be executed. They show no mercy.
No mercy. Wow.
George is still stone-faced. His last name's Stoner. I just got that. Alma is devastated. She loses it when they read his verdict. Loses it. They actually pass each other in the hall. It's the last time they'll see each other. And George gives her a nod and a smile.
Oh.
Like, it's okay.
Jeez.
Whether he did it or not, he's glad that she's free.
That's heavy.
So Stoner immediately starts his appeal, hoping to avoid execution. And Alma is willing to pay for it, his defense. And she's devastated. She starts writing him letters saying she only agreed to say what she said because her original plan was to say she had no memory of the night, but her lawyers told her that her telling the truth would actually help George. And she thought that she was helping George, and now she realizes wishes she could take it all back. She's beside herself. She
didn't do anything wrong.
She doesn't even go home. She is having a nervous breakdown. She's checked into a nursing home.
Jeez.
And she needs care. Like, that's what they call it. I don't think it's like
no
AARP stuff, but Alma can't shake this. This is devastating to her. So one day, Alma says, listen, I'm going to step out and go shopping, because she can come and go as she pleases, right? And before she leaves, she writes a letter and she leaves it there. Now her plan is to throw herself in front of a train.
Oh, no.
When she gets to the train station, there's too many people and she doesn't want anybody to get hurt. So she goes back and she has lunch at the nursing home and she writes some more things. Then she goes to the train station and she flips a coin to decide where to go. That's what George used to do, one of his things. So she flips a coin for 2 locations. It lands towards a place called Christchurch. So she gets on and she writes the whole way. She's writing all these things, all these notes, all these thoughts. She arrives in the evening. She walks to the riverbank and she waits for darkness. She takes out a knife. She removes her hat. She removes her coat. She places it neatly on the bank. And she says in her letter that she believes she's doing her boys a kindness and that what is about to happen is her choice. And she does not want them to ever see her like this. And the best thing for her to do is to disappear.
No, it's not true, though.
And she doesn't feel like she can help George. George is going to die. And she says, I cannot help him. And that is my death sentence.
No, he's a turd.
So she walks to the riverbank. She takes the knife and she plunges it into her chest 6 times.
Jesus
and then falls into the river.
Christ.
Across the riverbank, a farmer is just doing his thing and sees this.
He's like, what the fuck?
He's like, oh my God. He runs. He has to run up the bridge and like around the other side. He can't swim. And he sees the river starting to like bubble up with blood. And he takes off his clothes and he's trying to like make a line to Alma and she won't reach for it. More than likely, she was already dead. And so then he goes to get help, gets another man. The 2 men drag her out of the river and lay her on the riverbank, but she's already gone.
I don't like this ending.
I know, I told you it's tragic. Meanwhile, George
If he gets out,
George
I'll
gets a
lose it.
visit, and they say his date of execution is set for the middle of June. He says,
Right.
okay. And then they say, and Alma has died. And he breaks down sobbing.
Well, he did this.
Maybe. Well, with Alma dead, his lawyers convince him to write a letter saying that Alma did it.
That's messed up.
He writes a letter like they want. That appeal was denied, so he still has his execution, but everybody rallies around him. He got over 300,000 signatures, including people like the mayor, asking for mercy. And so his sentence is changed from execution to life in prison.
Hope it's a bad prison.
Well, meanwhile, Irene is taking care of Alma just like she always did. She's planning her funeral. She's one of the only people who attended.
Right.
She's making sure that Alma hated white flowers, which are common at funerals. So there's not a white flower in sight. It's all pink and yellow flowers. They have a private service in the church. When they go to the cemetery to bury her, there are thousands of people there just to gawk.
Ew.
And say mean things. And Irene breaks down from this.
Yeah.
She just is so upset. So upset. She only talks once to the press and she tells them that she feels guilty for this, that she wished she could have stopped that, and that people don't understand the kind of woman that Alma really was. And then she leaves town. Irene actually dies from breast cancer when she's 55, but she survives this terrible tragedy. George is serving life in prison. Christopher and John are separated and go with different guardians because Christopher has a different family.
Yeah.
So they're separated.
I was hoping Irene would take John.
I know. John kind of bounces back and forth between some guardians, like his grandmother, but then she dies, and then his aunt,
Got it.
But meanwhile, while John's growing up, George actually gets released for good behavior after 7 years.
Dude, I'm done with this guy.
He serves in World War II, and he's a decorated soldier.
He made it through the war?
Yeah, he survived. He married right before the war. He met a woman who honestly, it'd been 7 years. George is still really young. She didn't even know about it. So he made sure to tell her, like, hey, I got to tell you this. And she didn't care. And they got married and they had a normal life. He served in World War II. He came back. They had, issues with people harassing them, or anytime the story would be brought back up, right? But they had a daughter together, and George lived a full life. He actually died at the age of 83 in the year 2000, half a mile from where Alma died, and on the 65th anniversary of the murder.
Whoa.
Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
Yeah. So, Irene is dead. Francis is dead. Alma's dead. George is dead. John met Frank Lloyd Wright, who, as you know, is a famous architect. And John found out pretty early on that he happened to have his father's flair for drawing, and him and Wright were very, very close, and he became a kind of a surrogate father and a mentor.
Cool.
Part of the reason they believe that they became so close is because I didn't realize this, but Wright had a terrible tragedy happen to him as well. His girlfriend was murdered along with 7 other people. Yeah. And so they both kind of recognized that sadness and trauma in each other, I think, and it was easier for them to connect. But John worked very closely with him, and he actually married Wright's assistant, Kay Davison, in 1968. He became a successful architect. an author. He wrote books about, right?
Yeah.
And he was devoted, loving husband, and a wonderful stepfather.
Of course he was.
Dropped the step because it was just their dad. The reason they thought he was able to turn out like this is that he said, I just remember the good.
Mm.
He remembers Alma as a loving mother, a talented musician, and just a very, very kind woman. He says that he has no doubt in his mind that she had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And he holds no ill will towards George.
I do.
I know you do. He says, I just remember the good things of both of my parents. My dad was a really talented architect, and my mother was a kind, talented musician. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. And he lived to be 93 years old. He just died last year in 2021.
Wow. Well, I'm glad it turned out okay for him.
Yeah, I know. Chipmunk made it.
Chipmunk.
Now, the river where Alma died is said to be haunted, and people see her ghost walking along the riverbank.
Jeez.
So what do you think?
I hate it.
Yeah. Well,
that's not the right ending. Can you fix it?
I know. And he got out. Like, if she just I mean, she would have been 50, but if she just waited. It's weird, though, because that version of events is just what they believe to have happened based off of, Irene's testimony and what Alma later said. But, George's letter was saying that he had gotten the mallet from the house for a project. He put it in the coal cellar. Then he went upstairs. He fell asleep. And when he came down, it had happened, and he saw his mallet, and he hid it for Alma. But people have a hard time totally believing that, because how would Alma know where the mallet was? And how would she have found it?
Right. And didn't the family, his family see George taking it?
Well, no, George admitted he took it that day. He said he needed it for a project for the next day. But how would Alma have known that George had the mallet and had put it in the cellar? Like, how would she have known to go and get that particular mallet? That seems really unlikely. But George never said one way or the other after he was cleared, and he could have. He never said anything else about it. All he said was the whole crime was committed on an emotional basis. Both I and the lady concerned were in a complete emotional state. Our emotions were completely out of control. And
Your emotions were, bro.
Our emotions. Who knows? I mean, maybe she was involved. We really don't know.
But think about their temperaments. She's not like that anymore.
Anymore? I mean, she never was.
No, I mean, she used to be like really passionate, but like she's like been like kind of phased out.
She wasn't violent, though.
No.
I mean, her passion was in her music. She wasn't ever violent. I mean, that seems likely to me. Also, the force of it. It seems that if she didn't,
9-inch fracture.
Like, yeah, I mean, this isn't. Alma's not
a really hard.
You love to say that. You love to assess the body based off hardness and softness. It's like your main. It's your main thing. Well, I mean, Alma's
go for the throat.
We obviously, Alma's no Belle Gunnis. I mean, if this was Belle, it would have been like, sure, Belle took the mallet. But this is, I don't know that Alma would have had the force. Pianist.
That's what I said.
I want to really hit that A. Yeah, I don't know. But she could have been there in the room. It could have been there. Could have been there. I just don't think so. I mean, John didn't think so either. Irene was like, nope. Irene was so loyal to her. And the defense tried to make it seem like Irene was in love with her.
Oh.
And Irene was so offended by that because she was her friend and
she was not the prostitute companion.
She was not a prostitute companion. Like, you tried to upset Irene before you knew her.
You said companion.
That's what they called it.
I just connected dots.
Hey, can we get an update on how British Columbia got its name?
I've been listening to the story, so I have not been Googling.
I'm doing it now.
Okay.
I don't know why you'd think Christopher Columbus was up in Canada hanging around. British Columbia was... You gonna listen?
Go for it.
British Columbia was named after the Columbia River, whose name, like several others in the Americas, including Columbia and the District of Columbia, is derived from the explorer.
Yeah! Boom, baby. I mean, why else would they call it that?
That's from
just
CBC.
Like America is named after Amerigo Vespucci or something like that. Hold on.
I'm sure you nailed it. Well, whatever. Columbus can just do his own thing. Please stop.
That's what it is. No, it's Vespucci. Vespucci.
Okay, this is getting out of hand.
There you go, folks. That's your history lesson.
All right, so you think that Alma didn't know and she just tried to cover for George? You think that's their
Yeah.
version of events is correct?
I mean, look at the letters, temperaments. She's
Yeah.
not that kind of girl.
But it's really sad. I know you hate George. I get it. But I also think George was in way over his head and he was 19 years old. And the fact that he never had another violent episode in his life shows you that some people can
We don't know that.
change.
He could have been violent towards his other wife.
His wife said he was a wonderful husband and father. I mean, I think she would have, and she outlived him. So I feel like she maybe not. I mean, you never know, I guess.
She should. So my advice for the day, if someone chokes you, they don't truly love you, hit the hay. That's not okay.
Hit the hay? Doesn't that mean go to bed?
Hit the road.
Ooh, your advice got a little backwards, lady.
Hit the road.
Hit the road. Have them hit the road.
Yes. That's not an okay thing. You don't progress from that.
No. I mean, just everybody is so tragically sad in this. Nobody is a winner here.
No,
George and Irene,
is.
or not George, John and Irene are the only ones to root for here.
Ugh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
I hate that. Bad ending.
Hey, how's your sealing water?
It has a little bit more flavor, but now it's cooler, obviously.
Just dump it out.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to finish it.
Good. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at
Tea Time Crimes.
Oh, beautiful. You can email us at
teatimecrimes@gmail.com.
We'd love to hear from you. And who shall we tell today? I'm not even going to try. Alana?
Tell your home visit doctors.
So nobody.
Your companions, whether they be prostitutes or not. Your children. And
no, not your children, please.
No, don't tell your children. Well, your adult children.
Your adult children. There you go.
Your adult children and your mallet carpenters.
That was weird. All right.
That's it.
We'll talk to you next week. Thank you for listening.
Goodbye.
Oh, it's creepy. Bye.